Welcome to our channel. Today, we pause to remember a life that touched hearts and left a lasting impact. We'll explore their journey, the challenges they faced, and the moments that made them unforgettable. Join us as we honor their story, celebrate their legacy, and reflect on the memories that will continue to inspire and live on in the hearts of those who knew them. The news arrived quietly, without ceremony. On January 17, 2026, Gladys Mae West passed away at the age of 95. There were no flashing headlines, no urgent alerts. Just a brief confirmation and a pause. For many, her name was unfamiliar. Yet her life's work had guided them every single day. Gladys Mae West was a mathematician who helped shape the modern world. She did it with patience, discipline, and remarkable precision. Long before smartphones and navigation apps became part of daily life, her calculations were already mapping the Earth with care and accuracy. She was born on October 27, 1930, in rural Virginia. Life was not easy. Her family worked in farming, and expectations were modest. But Gladys showed an early gift for numbers. She believed education was a way forward, not just for success, but for stability and dignity. She worked hard in school and earned a scholarship to Virginia State College. At a time when opportunities for Black women in science were rare, she stood out through effort and focus. Mathematics became her language. It was a place where logic mattered more than background. After college, she joined the U.S. Naval Proving Ground in Dahlgren, Virginia. It was one of the few places where women and minorities could enter technical roles. Even there, she was often the only woman in the room. Sometimes the only person of color. Her work focused on satellite data and mathematical models of the Earth. These were not abstract ideas. They were practical problems with real-world consequences. How round is the Earth, exactly? How does gravity shift? How do satellites stay aligned over time? West helped develop models that explained the shape of the planet with extreme accuracy. She worked with early computers, feeding them data line by line. Errors were not allowed. A small mistake could throw off an entire system. Colleagues remember her calm approach. She spoke softly. She listened carefully. One former co-worker later said, "Gladys never rushed." She knew precision mattered more than speed. As satellite technology advanced, her work became more important. The models she helped build were later used in satellite geodesy. These systems would eventually be folded into what the world now knows as GPS. At the time, few people connected her name to the technology. The systems were complex. Credit was often shared or overlooked. West continued her work without complaint. She believed the math would speak for itself. Even after retirement, she kept learning. In her 70s, she earned a PhD in public administration. It was not for recognition. It was because she believed growth should never stop. For decades, her contributions remained largely unknown outside scientific circles. That slowly began to change. In later years, historians and researchers began to trace the roots of GPS technology. Her name appeared again and again. In 2018, Gladys Mae West was inducted into the U.S. Air Force Space and Missile Pioneers Hall of Fame. It was one of the first times her work received public recognition. She accepted it with humility. In a rare interview, she once said, "I was just doing my job. I loved working with numbers. I didn't think about fame." The words reflected her life. Quiet. Steady. Grounded. Tributes following her passing were simple, but sincere. A former student wrote online, "Because of her work, we find our way home." Another tribute read, "She helped map the Earth, and she did it without ever asking to be seen." Public figures also acknowledged her legacy. A science educator noted, Gladys West proved that brilliance does not need volume. It needs patience. Her story is not just about technology. It is about persistence. About showing up every day to do careful work, even when no one is watching. About believing that accuracy and integrity matter. GPS now guides airplanes, emergency services, shipping routes, and everyday commutes. It helps families meet. It saves lives. It connects the world. Behind all of it is math. And behind some of that math was Gladys Mae West. She lived through decades of change. She worked during times when recognition was limited and opportunity was unequal. Still, she contributed at the highest level. Not for praise, but because the work mattered. Gladys Mae West did not seek applause. She built foundations. She left systems stronger than she found them. Her legacy lives quietly, every time a location is found, every time a journey reaches its destination. She will be remembered as a woman who helped the world understand itself. Not through words or speeches, but through numbers, patience, and truth. And in that quiet precision, her impact will continue, long after the signal locks in and the path is clear. The confirmation came quietly, through early reports and messages shared among fans. In January 2026, Robert George Hirst passed away. For many Australians, the news felt deeply personal. Not because he sought attention, but because his rhythm had lived beside them for decades. Robert Hirst was born on September 3, 1955, in Camden, New South Wales. He grew up during a time when music was becoming a voice for change. From an early age, he was drawn to drums, not for flash, but for structure. Rhythm, to him, was about control and meaning. He became a founding member of Midnight Oil in the late 1970s. The band would go on to become one of Australia's most politically outspoken musical acts. While frontman Peter Garrett delivered the words, it was Hirst who held the ground beneath them. His drumming style was disciplined and restrained. He avoided excess. Every beat had purpose. In songs that carried messages of environmental protection, indigenous rights, and political accountability, his rhythm gave space for the words to land. Those close to the band often described him as the anchor. One longtime collaborator once said, "Rob understood that silence between beats mattered as much as the sound itself." That approach became part of Midnight Oil's identity. As the band rose from local venues to international stages, Hirst remained steady. Fame did not change his posture. He stayed focused on the music and the responsibility that came with it. The group's global success in the late 1980s brought new pressure. Touring intensified. Expectations grew. Still, Hirst maintained the same measured presence behind the kit. His playing never overshadowed the message. Beyond Midnight Oil, he explored other creative paths. He worked on side projects and later turned to writing. His book, Willie's Bar and Grill, offered reflections on life, travel, and the emotional weight of the road. It showed another side of him. Thoughtful. Observant. Human. After the events of September 11, 2001, touring took on a different meaning for him. In later interviews, Hirst spoke about the emotional toll of performing in a changed world. Music, he believed, still mattered. But it carried heavier silence. Fans noticed that depth. Social media tributes following his passing reflected that connection. One fan wrote, "He didn't just keep time. He gave the songs their heartbeat." Another shared, "Midnight Oil felt honest because of him." Public figures from the music world also paid tribute. An Australian musician posted, Rob Hirst showed that power doesn't have to be loud. It can be steady, and it can last. Though often standing in the background, Hirst was never invisible to those who listened closely. His drumming shaped how protest music could feel grounded rather than chaotic, firm rather than angry. He believed that rhythm carried responsibility. That belief guided his work for nearly 5 decades. It allowed Midnight Oil's songs to age without losing relevance. When the band reunited for later tours, fans were reminded of that presence. The same posture. The same focus. The same quiet strength. Robert Hirst's passing marks the loss of more than a musician. It marks the loss of a steady force in cultural life. Someone who understood that music could challenge power while remaining deeply human. He leaves behind a body of work that continues to speak. Not through spectacle, but through consistency. Through restraint. Through trust in the message. Robert George Hirst will be remembered as the rhythm behind a nation's voice. A musician who knew when to strike, and when to hold back. And in that balance, his legacy continues to echo, steady, thoughtful, and true. The news was confirmed without fanfare, shared first through industry messages and quiet notices. On January 18, 2026, Thomas Georges Borchardt passed away. There were no crowds outside his home. No public ceremonies announced. For many, his name did not appear familiar. But his influence had already traveled far. Thomas Borchardt was born on February 24, 1928. He came of age in a world recovering from war, where ideas mattered deeply and words could shape nations. From early on, he understood the power of thought, and the responsibility that came with guiding it. He chose a path that kept him out of the spotlight. Borchardt became a literary agent. Not a writer, but a believer in writers. His work was built on trust, discretion, and an ability to recognize voices that could change how people saw the world. Over decades, he represented figures whose ideas carried political and cultural weight. Among them were General Charles de Gaulle and Jane Fonda. Each came from different worlds, yet Borchardt understood how to protect their voices while helping them reach the public. Those who worked with him described a quiet presence. He did not rush conversations. He listened more than he spoke. One former client once said, "Tom never tried to shape your words. He helped you find the courage to stand by them." His role often placed him at the edge of history. He worked during moments of global tension, social change, and political uncertainty. Books and ideas passed through his hands before reaching the world. His judgment mattered. His restraint mattered even more. In publishing, power can be loud. Borchardt chose a different way. He believed the story should always come first. His name did not need to appear beside it. Colleagues recall his attention to detail. Contracts were handled carefully. Conversations were thoughtful. He treated authors not as products, but as people carrying responsibility. A longtime editor once reflected, Thomas Borchardt was the kind of agent who protected you from the noise, so the work could speak. It was a rare skill. And one earned through patience. Outside of work, Borchardt lived simply. He valued privacy. Even success did not change his habits. He preferred quiet dinners and long discussions over public appearances. As the years passed, many of the ideas he helped bring forward became part of public life. Political memoirs. Cultural reflections. Personal stories that helped explain a changing world. When news of his death spread, tributes came softly. A former author wrote online, "He believed in my work before anyone else did." Another shared, "Thomas taught me that influence doesn't need a stage." Those close to him spoke of his integrity. A family member said, he lived his values. He believed words should be handled with care. Thomas Borchardt understood something rare. That shaping history does not always mean standing at its center. Sometimes it means guiding from the edges, making space for others to speak clearly. His passing closes a chapter on a life devoted to ideas rather than attention, to voices rather than applause, to belief rather than control. In a world that often celebrates visibility, Borchardt's legacy reminds us of quiet influence, of trust built over time, of the unseen hands that help shape what lasts. Thomas Georges Borchardt will be remembered as the agent behind the ideas, a steady presence in moments that mattered. And through the voices he helped carry forward, his impact continues, calm, enduring, and deeply felt. The news was confirmed in the early hours, shared quietly by family and later echoed by former teammates. On January 17, 2026, Wilbur Forrester Wood Jr. passed away at the age of 84. For baseball fans of an earlier era, the moment carried a deep stillness. A reminder of a game once built on patience and trust. Wilbur Wood was born on October 22, 1941. His path to the major leagues was not immediate. Early in his career, he struggled to find a lasting role. His pitching was steady, but not spectacular. At a time when speed and power were celebrated, Wood seemed easy to overlook. Everything changed when he turned to the knuckleball. It was a pitch that resisted control and demanded belief. Many avoided it. Wood embraced it. He understood that unpredictability could become strength, if matched with discipline. With the Chicago White Sox, Wood found his place. Season after season, he took the mound without complaint. He pitched when others rested. He returned when others recovered. His workload became historic. In the early 1970s, Wood pitched more than 400 innings in multiple seasons. It was an era few can imagine today. There were no strict limits. No careful rotation plans. There was only trust. And Wood earned it. Teammates remember his calm presence. He did not chase strikeouts. He let the ball move on its own. One former catcher later said, Wilbur never fought the pitch. He respected it. The knuckleball required patience. It could fail without warning. It could float. It could fall. Wood accepted that risk every time he stepped onto the field. Mentally, it was a test few could endure. Fans noticed his resilience. Game after game, he returned to the mound. Win or lose, he showed up. One fan wrote years later, he didn't overpower hitters. He outlasted them. As baseball evolved, the game changed around him. Pitch counts dropped. Careers shortened. Wood's era faded into memory. Still, his records stood as reminders of a different philosophy. After retirement, he remained closely connected to the sport. He shared his knowledge quietly. He never claimed greatness. He spoke instead about preparation and trust. Following his passing, tributes reflected that respect. A former White Sox player posted, Wilbur Wood showed us what durability really meant. Another message read, he pitched with courage, not fear. To younger fans, his name may feel distant. But his legacy remains woven into baseball history. He represented a time when endurance was valued as highly as talent. Wilbur Wood did not rely on spectacle. He relied on consistency. On showing up when needed. On believing that patience could still win. His story is not just about a pitch. It is about mindset. About accepting uncertainty and standing firm inside it. About trusting a craft even when it offers no guarantees. Wilbur Forster Wood Jr. will be remembered as the knuckleball master. A pitcher who carried a heavy load without complaint. A player who proved that quiet strength could shape a career. As the game continues to change, his memory remains. A reminder of endurance, of trust, and of a time when greatness was measured not by speed, but by staying power.